Good afternoon, everyone. So today the question I have researched and will be answering is whether the mass media in America encourages the discrimination of Muslims and Islam. So why America instead of any other country in Europe instead? Well, with incidents such as France's hijab ban and the major refugee issue, I felt that many other situational or locational factors may contribute more to the opinions of Europeans. And since I want to look into how the media specifically affects the perceptions of Muslims, I chose the US, which, according to Brookings Institute, has the highest percentage of negative opinions regarding Islam at 46% here, as you can see, out of all of the surveyed non-European countries. And because of the significance of Islamophobia in the United States in the post 9/11 era. So the FBI reported a total of 388 recorded hate crimes against Muslims in 2016, which is a huge increase from 307 in the previous year. Additionally, in 2015, Pew Research Center surveyed Americans and found that 25 to 50% of people held some sort of negative opinion or bias against Muslims and their religion. As you can see here, opinions included believing that Islam is primarily a religion of violence, that a majority of practitioners are extremists, or that Islam has no place in modern American society. And outside of these recorded beliefs, there are likely countless unrecorded occurrences of implicit or unconscious discriminations in the form of preferences or patronization. An example was shown in our stimulus material regarding the perception of Muslim women in American society. In her interview, author Laila Abu-Lughon focuses on the issue of victimizing Muslim women and the resulting smug and patronizing attitude of Westerners who believe that Muslim women need to be saved from their culture. As she said in her quote here, the problem gets framed as one about another culture or religion, and the blame for the problems in the world are placed on Muslim men, who are now neatly branded as patriarchal. This will add on to misconceptions and negative opinions surrounding Islam. Thoughts like these will continue to be cultivated by the normalization and constant portrayal of such stereotypes. So my answer to the question is yes. The mass media in America does hold responsibility for the discrimination of Muslims due to biased over-focusing and over-speculation on links to terrorism, the spread of such hatred through influential people, negative portrayals in film, and because such discrimination is born through social cultural influences. In the post-9/11 era, widespread fear and panic of terrorism struck the US, and a huge emphasis was put on the role of the perpetrator's religion. This is a quote by Cheryl Cashin, this one here, a Georgetown University law professor, and it describes the phenomenon of the common terrorist stereotype attributed to Middle Easterns and Muslims, which is reinforced with constant appearances in the media and over-focusing on the Muslim perpetrators and motives. In fact, according to Aaron Kearns, who is a criminology professor, Muslim attackers can receive up to 4.5 times more, that's 449% specifically, more coverage than attackers who are not Muslim, which may lead to overestimating the amount of Muslims involved with terrorism and reinforce that stereotype or perception for the general Muslim population. Laila Abu-Lughon also mentioned Laura Bush's post-9/11 public radio address as a contributor to the patronization and victimization of Muslims. As Bush said in her radio address, that the state of Afghanistan's women breaks the heart of civilized people. In light of the recent events that had occurred, this put the implication and perception that all of Islam is a brutal, oppressive, and misogynistic religion set on taking over America, and that it's up to civilized people to resolve it. Adding on to the public statements are America's leading Islamophobes, according to Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, or FAIR for short. And this is a list of news hosts and media influencers who have been vocal over discriminating Muslims. People listed included Bill O'Reilly, a Fox News host, and Glenn Beck, a CNN host, and all have made controversial and rash statements regarding Islam. For example, Pat Robertson, who was also listed there, had called Islam a worldwide political movement meant to subjugate all people under Islamic law. Statements such as these are an extensive coverage for Muslims on the basis of religion and motives, facilitate the spread of stereotypes and discrimination, and inclines the public to feel the same way. Film tropes are quite common and recognizable in character backgrounds, and while mostly comical or harmless, they can still reinforce negative stereotypes and views about different cultures. Author Jack Shaheen analyzed 1,000 films involving Muslims in his book and documentary, Real Bad Arabs, and found that over 900 of them, 932 specifically, had depicted Muslims or Arabs poorly, which he had described as brute murderers, sleazy rapists, religious fanatics, or rich dimwits, and abusers of women. Such an emphasis on Muslims as the bad guys might not seem like a big deal at first, as it's easy to separate fiction from reality, but like in all kinds of media, representation still matters. Having a balanced representation of Muslims in film can reduce the normalization of such negative stereotypes and improve public perceptions of Islam. In fact, the University of Saskatchewan has dedicated an entire course to this study, which is called Islam in Hollywood. The course director, Fatiriza Halim, noted that the current approach to portraying Muslims in film is the idea of good Muslims versus bad Muslims, or a with us or against us idea, which gives the audience an incomplete understanding of Islam and prevents them from seeing Islam from another perspective. Halim agrees that a balanced perception and portrayal of Muslims is critical to fully understanding a different culture and religion, and important to preventing further misconceptions. It may be argued that discrimination is a natural, predisposed human way of distinguishing the world, separating us from people that are just different. But as stated in this quote by psychotherapist Alison Abrams, there is not a single gene that determines hatred. Bigotry and discrimination are learned attitudes and behaviors cultivated from social and cultural factors, especially the media. Psychologist Alfred Bandura's social learning theory also shows this, and it proposes that many aggressive behaviors in children are actually learned through imitation in the world around them. The only thing that really predisposes people to discrimination is the environment they were raised in. So to conclude, plenty of evidence shows that the mass media in America does have a hand in spreading discrimination and negative perceptions of Muslims and Islam through portrayal in the news and film, and through the controversial statements and purposeful spreading of discrimination by influential figures. But while the media is part of the problem, it can also be part of the solution. As I said before, through fair representation of Muslims without any unnecessary speculations over religious extremism, and by increasing public understanding of Islamic culture, the negative perceptions of Islam and unconscious biases or patronization of the culture can be reduced, and people who are afraid of Muslims or Islam can learn to overcome that fear. Thank you.
Can you describe for me some strategies that you use to gather your information and evaluate your sources, because it is dealing with discrimination and opinion?
Yeah, okay, so when I first started my research, it was actually really quite difficult to gather things that were specific and could be cited as research, because a lot of people who write about this topic do write from their own opinions as well, and it was a little difficult to separate opinions from fact. So what I did was I found a few research articles that specifically dealt with the influence of media in discrimination and opinions, and from there I looked through their citations as well, and everything just kind of like spread out, and I was finding a lot of sources, since the research on discrimination is actually quite popular right now, because it's a pretty controversial and major topic. There was a lot of researchers who were putting time into finding how the world around us influences our opinions. And so just by looking through citations in other research papers, and by going on sites that specifically held the scholar articles or academic journals, I was able to find some more facts out instead of opinions.
If you could take your research further, where would you go next?
The topic that got me interested in researching this, and that was brought up specifically in the articles I researched, was the idea of implicit discrimination or unconscious biases, because it's really hard to measure how whether or not people are bigots or feel discriminate against other people, because of course consciously they won't really admit to it. But everyone always kind of has those unconscious preferences, and I feel like that's something that would be really important to research, and I would definitely like to know more about.